No matter what, character always comes first for George R. R. Martin. Now, this is one of the things why I think he is just an absolute genius. He always just has his focus set dead on the characters. Everything in his books is literally driven by the characters. You could underestimate that, but let me tell you this. Do not be the person who reads George R. R. Martin's writing and just comes out underestimating that fact, because it is not something I think anyone No. I don't think any human on this planet should underestimate the fact that George R. R. Martin is absolute character builder. He's an absolutely character-driven author. Take A Song of Ice and Fire, for instance. Lots of people say that the books as well as the TV adaptation are just excessive. They just gore. They just this. They just that. But in reality, they are not. Okay, let me tell you what I'm talking about. So we all know him, and he is quite how do I put it? Well,
you send this whore to give me commands. What's this?
It's a gift.
Dothraki rags. Are you going to dress me now?
Please.
But this stinks of manure. All of it.
Stop
Would
it.
turn me into one of them, wouldn't you? Next you'll want to braid my hair.
You've no right to a braid. You've won no victories yet.
You do not talk back to me.
you know, he's not the most likable guy. It is very easy to hate him. But don't assume that George R. R. Martin treats this guy any different than he treats this girl or this other guy. He always treats his characters equally. In other words, he always has them drive themselves. The death of Viserys was character driven. He was the fool guy who assumed he could tame freaking Khal Drogo. I mean, he is that small and he was trying to tame a man this big. There's no world where you're going to tame Khal Drogo. He underestimated that fact, and what is the result? Well, you get this.
No, you can't.
His death was gruesome, yes, but it was up to the characters. The Dothraki are people who are quite brutish, okay? They're not going to kill this guy in a very nice way. So, the death of Viserys was driven by his character. Viserys caused himself to die. He angered Khal Drogo. And on top of that, Khal Drogo stayed true to his nature and killed Viserys in the most Dothraki way possible. You can say it's unnecessary gruesome, whatever you like, but it is absolutely staying true to the established characters. Khal Drogo himself dies, okay? Spoilers, but yes, he dies soon thereafter, okay? Now, how does he die? The female that eventually ends up killing him, well, she is driven by her own character. She has her own nature. She has her own hatred she withholds for the Dothraki. And so when she gets the chance to kill the motherfucker, she does it. She goes out there and she kills him. Hate George R. R. Martin for being gruesome all you like, but the Dothraki and everything around them needs to be gruesome because that's literally the thing. And number two, everything is character driven. Robb Stark, Ned Stark, all of these characters, they go down the drain, and at the end of the day, the deaths are caused by their character, and the characters who kill them are driven by their own self. This is always true with George R. R. Martin, and I think this is why I absolutely love his books. The next thing which I really love about George R. R. Martin is his immersion over speed. A lot of the books out there that I read are simply just books that run. They have very minimum attention paid to the environment the characters are living in. Everything is just minimal. Everything. Why? Because those authors are absolutely obsessed by getting to the next big moment. In fact, I have fallen into this trap myself. In my writing, before I picked up George R. R. Martin's particular attention to immersion, I used to simply have close to no descriptions of the world and the emotions of the characters, and all of that was just so I can run, just so I could run to the next big moment, the next big shocker. It is a trend that literally plagues a lot of the books in the market right now, and George R. R. Martin is the one author where you can read, in fact I have read lately, where you can just escape that trend. There is finally just an attention to the small things in life. You have characters that are just sitting down and talking to each other. This guy is literally immersing you in the world he has. He never falls into the trap that a lot of us other authors just fall into. He takes his time, as evident in both how slowly he publishes, and how long his books are. And the result is a voyage where you are swept away by his tactful descriptions and taken into this world. I will forgive you if you think this is irrelevant, but it actually has another very important effect. Audiences are always attentive to what's being presented before them. Okay, so if someone is reading a book and the book is taking its time to describe the environment, what ends up happening is that the audience slows down. They take in what is happening, and as a result, the audience become invested in the characters. When the audience cares about the characters, it gives George R.R. Martin a leeway to put the characters in a direct danger. And this ties nicely to the first tenet of George R.R. Martin. He's always character driven. So his goal is to make you love his characters. And as a result, by immersing you in the world, you get to care about the characters. And finally, you have suspense. Every chapter you are scared for what might happen to that little thing that you love. It all comes together to immerse you in a world where there are humans where you care about and they are in constant danger. And I think this ties in nicely to the third one, which is George R.R. Martin's ability to just focus on the rudimentary parts of the story, on the logic. There are very little plot holes in his stories, and I promise you, if you go out there and you look for plot holes, you will look like someone who is just nitpicking. Whereas another story that is famous, equally famous, for instance, if you go around trying to look for plot holes, you will find countless. For instance, Robb Stark's death. A lot of people were saddened by his death, but I was not. Okay, I did feel, I'm not a monster. I did feel a little tinge in there. But ultimately, this is why I was not saddened by Robb Stark's death. Robb promised to marry Walder Frey's daughter. Then, now think for a moment, okay? Just assume you are Walder Frey. I know he's a little bit freckled, but you know, just assume for a moment that you are Walder Frey, okay? This guy comes to you and his name is Robb Stark, and he promises you he is going to marry your daughter if you let him cross the bridge. Okay, you are a respectful man. You tell him, I am willing to strike a deal with you and I will let you cross my bridge if you marry my daughter. You and Robb Stark shake hands on that deal. Then, now think for a moment, okay? This Robb Stark guy, he goes around the bush. He bangs this beautiful girl who's, first of all, far more beautiful than your daughter. Then he puts a child in her. Okay, he puts a child in her and then walks back into your castle. In fact, he walks back into your castle expecting that you're going to like him. When I noticed what Robb Stark was doing, I didn't need an explanation that the Lannisters had set the Red Wedding up. It didn't matter to me that the Lannisters were behind the Red Wedding. I was already satisfied because Robb Stark was simply being a fool. The Red Wedding was already going to take place. Walder Frey was already pissed off enough. Okay, that guy did not need the favorable alliance with the Lannisters. He was already burning to kill Robb Stark in my eyes, okay? When I found out it was the Lannisters who were after the Red Wedding, coupled with Walder Frey's newly found hatred for Robb Stark, you have a cocktail of character-driven conflict. And you have Robb Stark driving himself into a situation where he is going to die. You have Walder Frey doing his part in the story. It is brutal, yes, but it's absolutely logical. Every character that takes part in that story, every part is logical. Robb Stark, Walder Frey, Tywin Lannister, the Starks, the Freys, and the Lannisters. All of them. It's absolutely just logical. How many authors, just look at yourself. You watch movies, I'm assuming. Hollywood is stuffed with this just mumbo jumbo. How many authors out there would have simply saved Robb Stark by some trick of plot and just took him out there unharmed? I'm going to tell you the truth. Countless authors. Countless. George R.R. Martin always pays attention to the smallest rudiments of his characters. Jeffrey just came to power, and he's obviously hungry to display that he's not just a child. So, he clips Ned Stark. Of course, you can just say he's just a cruel monster. But at the end of the day, there is a character in that little cruel head of Joffrey Baratheon. This is in a lot of his stories. There is always underlying humanity that drives his characters. And he is always the sort of writer that will adhere to the logic and ensure that conclusions based on the reasoning of his characters are not sugar-coated and are simply driven all the way to the proper end destination. He doesn't care. He's just gonna go there. His name is George R.R. Martin, and he's a fucking gangster. Then there's what I like to call the George magic. His focus on character, his tendency to immerse the readers into his stories, his tendency for taking things to the logical conclusions regardless of how it will turn out to harm his characters. It all adds up to become what I like to call the George R.R. Martin spell. It's the reason why I love him as an author, and it's always the reason why I think people need to read his other works. A Song of Ice and Fire is successful and it's good, but it actually clouds a lot of George R.R. Martin's other works he has done before, Song of Ice and Fire blew up. So yes, go out there and enjoy yourself. Let George R.R. Martin carry you on his voyages. Let him develop his characters, and I promise you, you will fall in love with his magnificent voice. Alright, please subscribe. If you want to support me, just consider liking. It will take you 2 seconds, just 1 second maybe, half a second, I don't know. Have a nice day. Bye.